Right. Alrighty, man. Okay, let's make this a little bit bigger. All right. So, okay. So, we are going to be starting Star Wars Outlaws today. But before that, this is going to be my review. Sorry, I gotta fix my hat there. This is going to be my review of this game right here, Black Myth Wukong. Now, it's a good game. With that said, I'm going to start off this review very simply, very easily, so people understand. This is not Game of the Year, not by a long shot. Um, I know this year's been kind of light, but compared to certain other games and other games that are going to be coming out, this game isn't all that. Now, let me get into why and kind of talk about like the details here and what exactly I think about it. So, firstly, graphics are great. They're amazing. They are really good. But with that said, there are I can think of 5 to 10 games that have just as good of graphics, if not even better. For example, The Last of Us Part 2, graphics even better than that game came out 4 years ago. Now, I get this is a small studio, right? And this is like the first game. For a first game, I will say it is very, very impressive for a first game. We've seen a lot of studios, like, the one that created the days before, or what was that one game that flopped? Or even Conquered, for example. You know, huge studio, horrible game. But yeah, the graphics are good. So I'd give that 9 out of 10. But like I said, I've seen any AAA game is gonna have amazing graphics. GTA 6 is going to. Last of Us 2 had it. Even that Spider-Man 2 game that came out last year, Alan Wake 2 that came out last year, amazing graphics. You know, yes, it has good graphics, but at the same time, there are so many other games that also have good graphics. Um, with that said, solid graphics, 9 out of 10. I'd say the strongest part of the game. The score was good too. There were a couple of Chinese songs that I didn't really understand the lyrics to, which makes sense because this is made by a Chinese company. But um, I liked the sound score was decent. It wasn't. I wouldn't say Alan Wake good or Last of Us good, but it was good. I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. For that. Um, and I don't really pay much attention to the stuff, anyways. I don't like. I wouldn't like. I don't weigh sound and like audio that much. So it wasn't that big of a thing to me, you know. So 7 out of 10, just average. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it was good. Um, Voice acting was actually really good, which surprised me. I had a feeling that because this is obviously a Chinese game, that the English voice actors, they weren't going to give them enough time or enough practice, or they wouldn't hire the right voice actors. But I was pleasantly surprised at how well the voice actors for the English version sounded, and how like authentic their acting was. That would I give that like a solid 9 out of 10. It was really, really good. Like, I was genuinely surprised. I thought they were gonna be like really sloppy, or like I don't know. I know how, so like some animes, for example, The dubbed version is just really bad, and I get this as a game, and it's different, but I was pleasantly surprised with voice acting. So acting wise and all that, motion capture, whatnot, whatever falls under acting for a video game, solid 9 out of 10. Really, really good, really impressive. The movement of the actors, the cutscenes, and all that. Now, gameplay. Mm. And this is where we kind of fall apart, sort of, and not because the gameplay is bad. First of all, I got to start with there are so many bugs in this game. There are so I don't know if I played on PC, by the way, and I have a really strong PC. I have a 4090. There were so many bugs. It was throughout the whole game, from the minute I started till the last boss fight with the other monkey, the other Wukong, Stone Wukong, whatever it was called. So many, 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 many bugs. Um, it was just first of all, one I don't know why, but I played with an Xbox controller, which I connected through the Xbox accessory, whatever thing, and I had it on Bluetooth. And at least once, every time I started the game up, my controller would just stop working, and my monkey would like my character would just like run around in circles, which I didn't understand why. It happened at least once every time I started the game up, and it even happened during a boss battle where I wasn't that close to killing him, but still I had that momentum going for me, which was really annoying. In addition to the control, I don't know if it's because of I was on controller or what, but the dodging in this game feels horrible. It feels really, really bad. There were a lot of times where I dodged and the game just glitched with hitboxes. I guess the dodging kind of goes hand in hand with the hitboxes. There were multiple times where like the hitboxes just were not what they were supposed to be. I mean, I before this game, the last game I played before this was Elden Ring, the whole game plus DLC, and compared to that, it's night and day. It is night and day. Like the the hit first of all, the hitboxes for some enemies, the taller enemies that like, for example, the crab guy at the end of chapter 4, that had like those really long legs and his body was all the way up here, so you couldn't hit his body but you hit his legs. That was one of the worst hitboxes I've ever experienced in a game. It was horrible. It was like super easy to miss. It was just really bad. In addition, dodging just felt off. It just felt I don't. It might have been the animation of the dodge, because when you're dodging, it's not the same animation. There's like three different so if you dodge, 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 the character does three different animations and then it kind of recycles next time. So for the fourth dodge, it would be the same as the first animation. I think that might have also played a part into why the dodging just felt so bad. It felt clunky. It didn't feel smooth. There was a lot of times where I felt like I should have dodged an attack and it just didn't register. So the hitboxes and the dodging was really, for me, I now obviously this isn't for every single boss, but for a majority of the bosses, not majority, I say for half of them, I felt this way. And usually it was for like the harder bosses to hit, like the ones that are like maybe a little skinnier and taller model. It just didn't feel right. So that's something they definitely need to kind of work on, and that definitely impacts the gameplay. Now the gameplay itself is fine. If it wasn't for the magic, so when you do R2 and the click square triangles or X Y B X, whatever the Xbox thing is, if it wasn't for that, the gameplay would suffer a lot, because it's a lot of spam square and then throw a Y, which is a heavy attack somewhere, and just start the enemy, and then just spam square again, and then kind of repeat. It was a lot of that, and then like when there's a charge attack that can't be staggered, just click B and like dodge it, and then go back to spamming. So if it wasn't for the abilities where you can like freeze time and the magic that Wukong has, the gameplay would have been rough. But I do think the a magic sit really does save the gameplay. It adds a lot to it. It's interesting. I don't think in Elden Ring the gameplay is so strong where you don't really need anything. I guess also the fact that you can change weapons, the fact that Wukong only had that one staff that had kind of the same attacks, it's kind of like The only upgrades to the staff would be your hits would do a little bit more damage every time you upgrade it and have more critical chance strike. So upgrading the staff doesn't like it's not like Elden Ring when you can like have different weapons. It's like a sword or a dagger or like a big hammer or whatever, which kind of changes the whole gameplay. This is just kind of like the same gameplay. So that kind of also kind of hindered it a little bit. Well, with the magic with the basic attacks and heavy attacks combined really worked out. I enjoyed it. I think a lot more games could learn from it because I don't really remember a lot of games, fighting games that have that kind of magic that you can use like that. Whereas in like, for example, in Elden Ring, you obviously have magic, but you kind of have to create your whole set just to do magic. Whereas in this, you can use magic and combat, melee combat, so it's pretty nice. So I did like that a lot. Um, Gameplay. What else in the gameplay wise? I noticed it's kind of interesting. A lot of enemies are really easy, and then they'll throw like a really hard enemy at you, which kind of feels weird sometimes. So, for example, in Elden Ring, as you're progressing, even the base enemies that you're walking through are also equally as hard. And then you get to like the main boss enemy, and then that boss is hard. Here, a lot of the time, the enemies that you find in the open world, are just really easy to kill. It, if they feel too easy, and then you'll go to a boss and expect them to be equally as easy. And then most of to be fair, a lot of bosses are really easy in this game. There are a couple that are extremely hard. It feels like they're too hard. Like it doesn't make sense. Like the disparity between the easy and the hard doesn't make sense. Like it makes it feel really off putting, um, which was weird to me. Um, yeah, like the only to be honest, the only time I've had challenges with bosses was like the last boss before a chapter ends. So those were kind of really the only hard bosses in the game. So there's like four or five of them, or I mean five, sorry, five or six of them. So I don't know. That kind of felt weird. Um, I mean, the skill tree is cool. It's fine. It's good. It works. Leveling up, I leveled up a lot of like damage and stuff, and sometimes I didn't really feel like I did more damage, but I mean, ability wise, it's fine. It works. You can, upgrade health, stamina, mana, whatever. It's fine. It works. It's good. I like the leveling up, the abilities. Um, so that's it for gameplay. I'd say. Oh, I guess, and also the last thing that would I don't know if this falls under gameplay is traversal. So like running around. This game suffers so much with not having a map. It can get, especially later on throughout the game, it gets very confusing and it's super easy to get lost. And I have had multiple times where I beat a boss or I finished one section, and I'm just like, where do I go next? That's happened like 3 to 4 times throughout the game for me. Like I genuinely didn't know where to go next, and none is clearer than chapter 6. Chapter 6 was one of the worst experiences I've had in a game for a while, in the terms of finding out where to go next and what to do exactly. Um, because chapter 6 kind of like you beat this bird boss, it kind of throws you out there, and then you beat the bird boss. So it starts off linearly. So almost the whole game is linearly except for chapter 6. You beat the bird. It starts off linearly. You beat the bird boss, and then you go out into this like open world, which is like open. I mean, there's also invisible walls everywhere. Really distracts from the game. Really, really distracting. There are like so many invisible walls where like there's like a branch, like you're like standing here, and like there's a forest like maybe like 2 feet away from you, and like you try to jump over and you can't because of an invisible wall. So that kind of hindered it. And then chapter 6, I didn't enjoy at all. What you had to do was really random. You had to find like this armor set, but it didn't really make much sense. Um, and then you have to like it was really weird. It suffers a lot because most of the game is linear, so it makes sense where you're supposed to go, with the exception of 2 or 3 times. And then chapter 6 kind of just throws you into this like really big space that's kind of like open, and you're like just like I had to look it up because I didn't know how else I would be able to beat it, which was very not fun. Um, but to be fair, that was like the last. hour or two of the game, so it wasn't a big part of the game. But for gameplay, wasn't a huge. I'd say 7 out of 10. Wasn't I would honestly? I'm even thinking about it going six because it would just. It's not just the gameplay. It's the glitches, the bugs, everything. The invisible walls, the exploration, the traversal of the terrain. It just wasn't fun. It like it got to a point where I kind of just wanted to keep progressing just to finish the game. There are some settings that are really cool though. There are some really cool settings, and then there's some settings that are really really miserable that you just want to get through them without even like you just want to like run past all the enemies just to get out of wherever you are. So not great, but again not horrible. Considering this company's first game, it's decent. It's decent. You can definitely tell it's a first game though. There's definitely a lot of things like you'd see in AAA games where like you can tell, okay, this is kind of a step above. For example, The Last of Us Part Two, gameplay wise, I'm talking about. For invisible walls, obviously there wasn't like an open space, and then like you try to go through there and there's an invisible wall. Everywhere where you like there's an invisible wall, there's like forests or trees, so you're like, oh well, obviously I can't pass through that, right? Or like a building or like a car, and you're like, okay, or a truck that's blocking the road, so you know I can't. There's a lot of times in this game when you're walking through a forest, it'll be a completely open path and it's just an invisible wall to stop you from going that way, so that it really takes out of the game, at least for me. So that's gameplay, and then last thing I want to talk about is the story. 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10 for effort because there's a story there. This is exactly like Elden Ring. There's a story, but there's no point in trying to even follow it. Honestly, same with Elden Ring. There's a story there, but what's the point? Just play the game and have fun. There's no story to follow. It's confusing. It's I tried focusing so much and it just didn't make sense. It was a really really confusing story. Um, it didn't make sense to me. I got to a point where I'm like, oh okay, I kind of got the gist where you're going west, right? Other than that, I kind of that's the overall objective. I understood everything else. I didn't get at all the characters' names. It was hard to follow the characters because of their unique Chinese names. Like I was really confused with the story, and so 3 out of 10 for the story. Um, Same as Elden Ring. I would give an Elden Ring a 3 out of 10 just because it's really hard to follow. Like, yeah, you can look up a video, but that's not the point. The point is to understand the story through the game, right? For example, The Last of Us Part Two. I use this as an example because it's the biggest game the past like 5 years, I would say. And okay, I'm not talking about the story itself, but you understood the story. You understood what's happening. Okay, you're trying to get revenge. This and that happens. I'm not saying it's a great story, but at least it's easy to understand. You can follow it. This story, even for Alan Wake, to be honest, it was really hard to follow and understand what's going on through the story because there's all that sci-fi and stuff. It gets really complicated, and I find a lot of games have this problem where their story is either too complicated or they just don't know how to tell a story. Because with video games, you're not just telling a story; you're trying to make a good game, right? It's not like a movie where you're just telling a story. So video games, a lot of them I find have a really hard time telling a good story. Spider-Man 2 did it a good job. I didn't like Alan Wake 2. I didn't really understand the story that well. Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring, I put in the same category as might as well not even have a story. Just throw us in this world and let us play for like 20, 30 hours and call it a day. Just don't even bother with the story, in my opinion. Um, I can't remember any other game I played. Uh, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a great example of a great story. It's easy to follow. You understand the characters. There's not 100,000 characters. There's the 6 7 main characters that you got with you. You're following Sephiroth. He's kind of messing up the world. He's trying to like become a god, and he's going to destroy the world in the to become one. And it's easy to follow. And then you're following Shinra, what they're doing with Shinra, uh, and like how that affects the world, and it makes sense. You can follow it. It's easy to follow. Whereas with these games, it's really hard to follow. Same with Dragon's Dogma was hard for me to follow. However, Rise of the Ronin was very easy to follow for me to follow. It made sense, even though there's a lot of it was hard to follow characters' names. So anyway, I'm kind of off track. But with that said, I really did not like the story of this game. So I give it a 3 out of 10. Um, so that's I basically did gameplay, story, glitches, bugs, graphics, settings were really cool. The boss designs were amazing. I loved it. 10 out of 10. Great boss designs, especially there's this one boss in chapter towards the end of chapter 5 that's like a fire boy. He's like a red boy, and then he eats this like yellow thing, and he becomes like this really cool demon type character. It was like the coolest boss. Like it, super 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 cool. I thought it was awesome. It was really cool. I even thought I even remember thinking, oh, how cool it would be to dress up as this guy for Halloween. It was like really cool, awesome boss designs. Whoever designed the characters did a hundred out of 100, like 110%, like 11 out of 10, 12 out of 10, like super super great job with the character designs. Really 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 well done. And that's kind of it. That's really, I mean, I might be missing, I'm sure I'm missing something. I didn't really write anything down. I didn't write all these stuff down. There's a bunch of stuff. But graphically wise, really good. Gameplay wise, decent. A lot of bugs. Definitely lowered that gameplay score for me. Really annoying. Invisible walls really takes you out of the setting, the game. Kind of like makes you realize you're playing a game, if that makes sense. Oh, mm, and yeah, I mean, it's overall it's a good game. Is a game of the year? Not even close. If you're comparing this now, if you're comparing it for the year, I understand there are not a lot of good games out there, but I will already tell you, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is 100 times better than this game, gameplay wise, story wise, right? Maybe graphically it's not as impressive, but Final Fantasy VII is just overall. I'm talking about overall here, not just like separate things. Overall, Final Fantasy VII definitely beats Wukong by a mile. Dragon's Dogma, I'd make a good, I'd make a good debate as to even Dragon's Dogma having a better chance winning Game of the Year compared to this game. I think Dragon's Dogma was better personally. I had more fun playing it. Um, And then there's also that fun factor. Don't get me wrong, this game is fun, but there are definitely times where I'm like, I kind of wish this game would just end already for one reason or another. Whereas with Final Fantasy VII and Dragon's Dogma, I don't really get that feeling. Um, so yeah. Um, so yeah, and then also thinking ahead in the future, we got things like Indiana Jones, right? Um, Black Ops 6. What else is there? There's like, I mean, Assassin's Creed Shadow, but that's Ubisoft, so I doubt that's gonna be any. I mean, it'll be probably fun to play, but Game of the Year, I doubt it. But Indiana Jones, Black Ops 6. What else is there? There's a bunch of stuff, right? There's that new Zelda game that's for Switch. I don't really play Switch though that much, but that's also a thing that's coming out. What else is there? What else? Regardless, what I'm saying is there are already two games in the past uh, 8 months, 9 months that have come out that I already think are better than this game, and in addition, there are like going to be another 2 to 3 until December 12th, whenever the Game Awards, whenever that happens, where I think they're going to be games that come out that are going to be a better contender than this for being Game of the Year. Now, with that said, this is a very impressive game for a beginner, for a first time studio game science. It is very impressive. However, you can tell it's a first time game for a studio. You can tell there aren't it's not as developed, it's not as polished as certain games. For example, Elden Ring, for example, Last of Us, for example, Alan Wake, for example, Spider-Man 2, for example, Final Fantasy, you know. I know it's just a remake, but still like you can tell there's like there are small things that throw you off that kind of just tell it's not that great of a game. So, overall score, overall score. Let me add the text here. Okay, overall score. I'm gonna put it in red. Overall score out of 10. Out of 10, 10 being 100, A plus, you got into Harvard, Stanford, every Ivy League school. 0 being you're dumber than a donkey. 0, you can't even add or subtract or do anything. I'd give it. Now, I'm keeping in mind this is a new company. Keeping in mind, I'd give it an 8.1. 8.1 out of 10. And that's a little generous. That's a little, it's between 7.5 to 8.2.3 for me. Honestly, I give it an 8. 8 out of 10. Not even an 8.1. 8 out of 10. 80%, I think that's really, I think it's a little generous to be honest with you. Because if we think 8, that's above average. I mean, it is an above average game. It is. Don't get me wrong. It is an above average game. If you say 7 out of 10 is an average game, I'd say this is an above average game. It's not a 9 out of 10 game where that's like a amazing game. It's definitely. I don't think there's a 10 any 10 out of 10 games. That's that. I mean, that would be a perfect game. Maybe GTA 6 would be a 10 out of 10. Or GTA 5 might be a 10 out of 10. It's a 10 out of 10 is like once in a decade sort of game, like a GTA, like a I don't know, like a once in like a decade long game type of thing. So it has like it has to be that impressive sort of to get a 10 out of 10. 9 out of 10s are your like Last of Us, your Final Fantasies, your just your like they're amazing games, but they're not like oh my god, like you know what I mean? They're not like oh like they'll blow your mind away type things. So 8 out of 10 are your averages. It's decent. Your Black Myth Wukong. What else could I compare this to? Elden Ring, I say, is better, so I can't really compare it to Elden Ring, even though it's like a Souls like. Rise of the Ronin, sort of. I'd say Rise of the Ronin isn't as polished, as good. Um, I'd probably put Rise of the Ronin 7.5, 7.6 ish. But around there, like around Rise of the Ronin, around, what are some other games that have been coming out? I can't remember now off the top of my head that I've been playing. Uh, no, I wouldn't say Alan Wake. Maybe around your Alan Wake's because Alan Wake's gameplay was kind of boring. It wasn't amazing gameplay. So I'd probably put Alan Wake somewhere down here. Um, yeah, it's an above average game. It's good. It's not amazing. 100% not game of the year. Yeah, uh, yeah, an 8 out of 10. I mean, suffers from non-existent story. Gameplay is good, but too many bugs. Way too many bugs. Too many invisible walls. Graphics are amazing, but I mean the graphics have been. I mean, Last of Us 2 has the same graphics, if not better, and that game came out 4 years ago. So saying graphics are amazing, yeah, you can say that because they are. But how many games have amazing graphics? Like they're not. They're amazing, but there's not. It's not nothing to like lose your mind over, right? Where like it's like super realistic. I'm expecting like something like GTA 6 to have like oh my god to lose your mind over, right? Animations too. Animations weren't that great. They were average, very like 8 out of 10 animations, 7 out of 10 animations. Traversal was horrible. I hated the traversal. There's no map. It's really easy to get lost. very linear, even very linear at times. And then when it's open world, the open world is super gets super confusing. There's so many paths that kind of just go different places. 8 out of 10, average. Just an average game. So anyway, that's my review for Black Myth Wukong. I definitely recommend, um if you've played all the amazing games that are out there and you kind of don't really have anything going on, it's definitely like the next best thing. But I mean, if you haven't played like The Last of Us, GTA's, Final Fantasies, like the 9 out of 10 games, then I definitely recommend doing those and then coming to this. But that's my review. Okay, now I need to go do Outlaws. That's gonna be fun.